Hi guys, AJJM here, part 2 Destiny Design Analysis walkthrough. Big emphasis on talking about tone today and tone breaking inside a game. Also heads up, I'm going to be recording about 5 videos worth of footage at once in big chunks and then uploading them in these smaller pieces because it's getting ridiculous trying to upload a 40-minute video to YouTube with Australian internet. Yay. Alrighty, so Gauls just kicked us off the ship and taken our immortality, which seemed the last ship we found out we survived. And looks like we're playing our intro sequence again, our little dream sequence, I'm assuming. And obviously we're looking at some main elements here, that the bird, which we find out the significance of later. I'm assuming the human corpses are the fall of the city and the, fall of humanity. I'm not going to lie, those pyramids remind me of the pyramids we saw on the ground in the Cabal ship, like just a little concrete texture, and I don't know why. But I think this is a bit out of place, I'm not sure. Like, we have the 3 main elements here in the constellations, but from what I remember of Destiny 1, for example, they were entirely irrelevant. They were just your cool superpowers. Like, they weren't a big part of anything, really. Alright, so the bird leads you to the shard. Cool, done, easy, simple, and hopefully expanded upon. Thanks for welcoming me again, Bungie, wow. Gee whiz. Yeah, loading scene. Not in the cutscene again. At least this one's not as long. Alrighty, here we go. This is the, as I've talked about at the end of the last video, the moment where the kick is taken away because you just fell, 2Ks or whatever and have been lying there for 2 days and then you get up. You know you're never going to have a problem. But going for our sort of post-invasion cityscape, it's nice to see your Cabal patrols going past, adds a little bit of life to the world. It's a shame that, and actually we see in front of us one of the war beasts there, which will catch us later. And speaking of other symbols that we see here, there's something that I should talk about here. So this tree, we also see one in the main plaza. I think that's a reference to Destiny 1, its big hub area. And it's an interesting symbol, and obviously it's very intentionally put right in front of you at the city's fall, and the base of it is on fire and stuff. Unfortunately, we've got a problem again where the concrete next to it is on fire as opposed to having the actual tree on fire, or a leafless model or something. But yeah, the Cabal patrols going past, and so obviously they can't notice you. This section, as we can see, is very heavily scripted. And it's just, we've got other trees and bushes down there that aren't on fire, and that's a shame. One thing that is nice though is the dud ordnance pod in front of you. A reminder of how they invaded, and just the fact that it hasn't gone off and there's possibly Cabal dead inside it gives me a giggle. But yeah, so then we're hit with a really scripted sequence where you're not really meant to interact with anything, you're just meant to move from A to B and look at the sparks and hear the noises and see the flashlights and go, oh my god. I do like the fact that as soon as you wake up, you walk downhill and into a sewerish sort of thing. Like, that's the first thing you do. I think that's fairly symbolic, and it's just a movement thing, so that's good, ties in. Except, there's one thing here. Obviously, I see some fire on the ground, and I know fire hurts us. And I know this is meant to be a big, important sequence that says, hey, you're really vulnerable now, don't die. And there you go. It doesn't really matter because you're just going to restart anyway. And that's something I want to talk about in this video, is the idea between the tone that the narrative and the world wants to set up and the tone that your character presents, that mechanically the way you interact with the world is totally like 180 opposite. So yeah, we'll just skip past through here. But yeah, that descent into the sewer, that's a nice, I'm assuming it's a sewerish, it's a nice little, nod to what's going on, what your character's doing. And height, like moving up and down through a level, is something that's actually used, and we'll see more of later in the video. I do like the ship that goes right over you and just doesn't notice you. But obviously there's been a fair amount of effort put in here with all the models running around and all the light sources and everything like that. Like, this probably had a bit more time put into it than honestly I'd say the map for the intro sequence that we had before, pre-fall. Alrighty, this kind of breaks it though. Look at the Cabal patrol walking past. One, they don't see you. which means you don't interact with the environment at all, which kind of sucks. And 2, the ghost is just throwing a flashlight. I'm not even going to touch on how disappointed I am that you just immediately find your ghost, because we've already talked about there being no kick. So, but it is kind of a shame that there is so much of this sequence here that is you being separate from your environment, as opposed to, you know, them taking pot shots at you and laughing or something like that, you know, which sort of, you know, pulls you into it again. But also, something to point out, we died before and we jumped into that fire. And because this is so heavily scripted, like, it makes me wonder why they put the fire there. Like, why give your player the opportunity? That's me trying to shoot at the tank before I realise I've got no bullets. Just to see if I can break the tone even more by shooting at the tank and having it just continue to roll past. Also, this is cool. This is a cool throwback here. The orange light on the wall to the hole in it is where we first meet the Cabal. So that's how they first interact with us, and this is what we use to escape them. The hole in concrete with orange backing. It's cool. And that's a reference back to the last video. Also, and this is something that's used a lot, the tunnel transition for different light sources indicating different, you know, not really levels, but different themes. That's cool. And it's well done here, and it's nice and simple, and the fade out works at that point. But yeah, considering that's so heavily scripted, like that's just a 5-minute walk, why put a fire, why let your player kill themselves and destroy the tone that you're making? And I think this is the first time that a Destiny, I don't remember in Destiny 1 there being much sort of just lush greenery. And there's I thought it was a hawk, turns out it's a falcon. I like the fact the wall's behind you there, like, and I'm glad that model's in the skybox, frankly. It adds a little bit of continuity. But yeah, this is the first time we get, I think, a skybox like this. In Destiny 1, Earth is all just snow and like rusted trucks, from memory. So it's nice to see this. And there's something we need to start talking about here with this tonal stuff. Like, the soundtrack that's happening here, what the robot is saying, look at the like words on screen right now. The whole emphasis is, there are dead guardians. If you die, I can't resurrect you. You know, like, you're scrounging ammunition, you're in this wilderness. And I like the fact that the Cabal are sending dogs after people, like, that makes sense. Someone's obviously thought about 2 things. Number 1, the type of enemy that you'd send to hunt down survivors, and number 2, yeah, I'm letting myself die here. Number 2, you know, introducing a quadruped enemy type. Okay, but going back to the point of tone, we've just utterly destroyed that. Because your robot, Nolan bot, thinking Nathan Drake, tells you cannot die, be careful, and if you die, you just come back, it doesn't matter. That's the problem here. And you get your submachine gun with 0 ammo, which is interesting. Here we go. There, now we just picked up our second version and reloaded it. So I think that's one of the big problems that that's happened in production, is the game that exists in a narrative standpoint, exists in the standpoint of the world that they've created here, and then the game that exists mechanically is a copy of Destiny 1. It's cut and paste, which doesn't work here, because this is a different type of story. This is a different environment. This is a different atmosphere that's meant to be presented to the player. So Control-C, Control-V doesn't work. It's really interesting that was obviously, because Destiny 1's, you know, being the success it was, and with for a fairly good reason actually, a fairly lackluster story it had. It's a shame to see, oh yeah, that worked, we'll just copy and paste. Also, something to note here about the way that it seems to, like, the sloppiness in loading in and out of scenes. I'm meant to go down that little tunnel just to the left there, and I'm just going over here to see if I can peek over the ridge. Now, either they didn't make a skybox, or they were just super lazy, because I'm nowhere near where I should be. You can see on the screen there, it starts giving me the turn back signal, and it decides it's going to load the next level section anyway, which is a bit of a shame. Like, why would you not just bound your trigger volume for that? So yeah, this transition into the snow is cool, and obviously because the game can just tell you, and the game can, it's alright, just tell you that it's been 2 days. What the game probably shouldn't, and this is me having a big sigh here, what the game probably shouldn't tell you straight up is that you're following the Falcon. because that's the kind of thing that your players generally will pick up, and if they don't, it's not really a massive loss to them, because Hawthorne, NPC that you meet later, sort of explains it a little bit, or it makes sense. But there's something that really takes the punch out of it, because it goes, oh, the players are dumb, they won't get it. And yeah, credit where it's due. That's a nice shot. That's a well done cinematic shot. It does make you feel small. It does make you hug the cliff face and go, I don't want to be seen. Unless you're me and you decide to shoot it just to see what happens, because it's a skybox element and you know it's not going to interact. But it's well done regardless. And it sort of really gives you something to move forward here. Now this ridge is obviously our transition. The light source is a big thing. Destiny 2 seems to use light sources a lot to convey tone more than a lot of other things. And this is your transition into the golden light of a new dawn. So you literally look away from the burning city, go over the top, the crest, essentially, you know, go over the summit, and on the other side is your valleys and trees, and the idea of, you know, that there is something that you can't just sit there and look at the burning city all day. A new thing has to be made. And this is where I noticed that the flat ground textures don't have a height map, and it, honestly, seriously, put a fucking height map on. Your materials, just, good lord. I don't have particular settings or anything set up with this. I think they're like high or a mix of medium and high, but seriously. And this is something else that's kind of cool. It's kind of cool, but the can't be bothered moment saps it a little bit. So we've got our pack of dogs that are hit with our, you know, what you're assuming is their trainer or some sort of, you know, hunter-killer unit to track down survivors, which is really cool until you realize it's literally the bulk standard legionary unit, which I guess is okay, but the name is still legionary as well. Like, that's, I don't know their code, but like, for one enemy going, no, this unit has a different name. This unit is Legionary Trainer or Legionary Hunter or something. Like, that little bit of extra effort that solidifies what the enemies are doing in the world is not there. Which is a shame, because, and I know it's nitpicking, but it's sort of just going 80% of the way, you know? 80% of the way to a cool idea. So we've been given our moment in the sun, and then we start to descend. Except the idea here is instead of descending into, you know, the decay, and yeah, that flat texture. Instead of descending into the decay of, you know, our burning city, we descend into the idea of a new world, a new dawn. And this is cool that you can go, it doesn't really matter, but I do like that little, you can go the safe way or over the log, and you're, like most players will go over the log because it's easy. It's also a representation of taking a dangerous route. Another cool thing here is obviously if we look up to the mountains where all our snow, you know, came from, and sort of we have that little snow indicator on the platform telling you yes, jump there. That's cool. This is a bit how you going. You know you're not going to be able to make the jump, but you just got to do it, which kind of goes against all your self-preservation instincts that Nolan bot says, hey, preserve yourself. Alrighty. So this is where we meet our first member of the new world, essentially, the destroyed world.
Lying around. Things must be worse than I thought. And that's our cue. Time to go, people.
But wait, where are you all going?
As far away from here as possible.
That falcon, it belongs to you?
The name's Hawthorne, and this is Lewis.
And there we go. I feel like with that, and just seeing the falcon in the map, you can get your message across without having Nolan bot go, are we following it?
Time to make yourself useful, Guardian. All right, people, spin them up. Got a long flight ahead of us.
Alright, so before we go on, I want to talk about Hawthorne for a bit. Because in this sort of starting, this introduction, she's presented as like almost the cut and paste, kind of sassy, in control, no nonsense sniper lady, right? Which seems to be more of a stereotype these days. But the problem that ends up happening with that is that later her dialogue has nothing to do with that. Like, her dialogue makes her kind of timid and stuff, which we'll talk about more in the next video. It's a really weird shift for the character's tone. Oh, oh my god. Goal TV. Can we just have a giggle about that for a second? I just want to have a laugh. It's like the 60s Batman intros. Oh.
Grace me with your light. Take your place at the center of my empire. See me, and the Red Legion will be your true guardians. Dominus. The city is secure.
So this is a cool cutscene. There's a lot of stuff to dissect here and talk about.
And those foolish enough to remain have been executed. Victory, as with all things, is yours to claim.
Also, the triangle cutouts of the second in command shoulder plates remind me of the pyramids that we saw in the cutscene and the chunks out of the floor before. I don't know why. So it's this is shot as a conversation between friends, not from, you know, the angles at his feet looking up at the leering bad guy. Also, a cool thing is the character design for this does deserve some props for these guys, their faces, because the curled up top lip is a sign of aggression amongst, you know, humans and other like primates and that kind of stuff. So it's cool that they are naturally given that to present their aggressive sort of warlike nature as well.
We have spent our lives, you and I, working to reshape our society, reforge our
Now this is cool.
rebuild
These
nearly destroyed by capitalism.
these lines here, the idea that you break the persona, and the second in command goes, "Look, Gaul," and it's obviously presented as some sort of, you know, friend or compatriot. Like, we put effort in, and it's not actually framed as something, pardon me, something that's like an incredibly negative campaign or an incredibly destructive campaign. Like, the focus for these two characters, and we will stop and talk about this because I feel like we need to. Gaul is presented in almost a sympathetic light here. So for the main bad guy, I don't know what happens in the rest of the story. I don't know if he becomes a good guy or what. But he's presented almost sympathetically in the idea that you see some of his concerns, you see his weaknesses, you see his goals, and you see an intimate conversation between people who've known each other for a long time. Not a warlord, like, you know, fucking shit up, essentially. Until we get to this bit, anyway. Here's where we start to get into that more aggressive, you know, persona.
So you're the one who speaks for the traveler.
Gaul TV. I don't know why that's there. You'll get it even if you don't do that, but it's a little bit weird. So yeah, that's been a fair amount to unpack there, and there's, I think the biggest thing to talk about, yeah, as I've said before, is the difference in the tone that the game presents to you, and the tone that you take acting within it as an agent, which is weird. I mean, it's a safe thing because most of the players aren't going to be looking for the narrative because they know that Destiny 1's narrative was a bit how you going. And obviously the second thing there is this is the big transition. This is your big walkthrough and transition between, from the old world to the new, from the old people to the new. And that's well executed. From a visual narration sort of point of view, it's well done. Now I'm going to leave that there for now, and I'm going to go and start making stuff for the next videos. Have fun. See ya. Oh, wait. Oh, that's right. Like the comment button. Yes, do that. Alright, bye.